international markets. This incubator will give them that springboard.
So this incubator is a first of its kind in Ukraine. It's an open source incubator. It's the kind of incubator that you'd expect to see in New York or in Silicon Valley or Austin or Boston, but it's designed really to work here in Ukraine.
Well, in 2017 I participated in bootcamp with Chuck, and well, he was so demanding, he was really strict, although he was really helpful.
For me, mentoring and investing and being part of a young company's growth is the pinnacle of my career.
For me, it's mostly about giving back, because I really believe into this give back economy. So the more you share, the more you get.
Before starting a business, you'd better to go through an incubator, just because you will see your team in a different perspective. And you will interact with mentors who will actually will be really honest whether your idea is good or bad.
After the incubator, team became more strong, more forced to fight with the obstacles outside. And of course, the business model more globally. This can help you to make progress a little bit faster. And in startup world, speed is pretty everything.
If you are really intent on learning this stuff, on becoming a sharp global entrepreneur, this is the opportunity, the way for you to enter into this sphere and compete effectively for funding, for distribution channels, for partnerships, in a way that we don't think has existed in Ukraine up to this point.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to America House. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for your interest in the EO Business Incubators. We're so excited to be launching the program today. You are the lucky guests at the very first Q&A session for EO Incubators. Just a little bit about the Incubator program. It is Ukraine's premier seed stage mentor-driven incubator program. It's designed to support technologists and entrepreneurs in launching and scaling their industry-changing technology businesses. Fundamental to the incubators is an ecosystem. It's initially going to be in Kyiv and Kharkiv, and it's supported by the USAID Competitive and Economy Program, and it is going to grow the platform in which Ukraine's newly emerging tech businesses can compete globally. And we hope that each and every one of you will be part of this amazing process. So at America House, we're delighted to have you here this evening, and we're also delighted to be the hosts of the very first incubator that will be starting on May 20, the week of May 20. Applications are already out online. You can find everything at the EO Facebook page. Check it out, figure out what you need to do to apply. And also, you are here this evening to have your questions answered, to find out more, to figure out the process. So we hope that you'll apply, and we hope to see you back at America House in a couple weeks, or a few weeks, 6 weeks, something like this. Yeah, 6 weeks. If you're here this evening and you have friends who couldn't make it, we're going to have another session tomorrow at the Kyiv City Administration. We're going to be having sessions all over Ukraine in the next week, the next 10 days. And then if you can't make it to any of the sessions and your friends can't make it to any of the sessions, we'll even have a virtual Q&A session on April 13. So, yeah. And Chuck is here to check everything I say. So speaking of Chuck, Chuck is actually going to, you don't have to listen to me for much longer. He's here this evening. He's the co-founder of the EO Incubators, professor at Cornell University, and here with us this evening, please welcome Charles Whitehead.
So great. So thanks very much for coming this evening. What I thought I would do is spend, 10, 15 minutes, not that long, just talking generally about the incubator, and then open it up to questions. And that's because I think it's probably best just to hear any questions or concerns or things you'd like to know more about. And if I don't have the answer, I'll make it up. No. A couple of things just in terms of background. So I'm a professor now at Cornell University. Perhaps some of you know Cornell Tech. I am also director of one of the programs at Cornell Tech. The concept behind U.S. incubators and how we think about the incubation process really is what underlies this incubator system here in Ukraine. So what we're trying to do is bring to Ukraine a U.S.-style open-source incubator, not something that so far has existed in Ukraine. And so what I'll do is I'll start with a very, very just short discussion, talk a little bit about the background, some of the requirements. I will tell you, we already have 3 applications. Who would have known? We only opened the applications last night. Yeah, and they're the 3 best ones. So we already have 3, but we're looking to, in the first round, probably bring in somewhere between 8 and 10 projects into the incubation system, both in Kharkiv and Kiev. Over time, we will grow. I will say, for those of you who are thinking whether or not to apply, you should, for no other reason than to understand what we're looking for. The application itself lays out a large part of what we're interested in. I'm told by friends of mine who are familiar with incubators in Ukraine, they've read the application, they say it's quite noticeably different. That you can tell from just simply the questions we're asking that our focus is a little different from what other incubators in Ukraine are focused on. So with that, why don't I talk a little bit about the incubator. And really this is based upon my coming to Ukraine. So I've been to Ukraine really over the last 3.5 years. I started in Kharkiv. I was actually lecturing. Okay, don't tell anybody. Oh, this is being live streamed. Okay, don't tell anybody. I am the first American honorary doctor from the National Law University, Yaroslav Mudrye in Kharkiv. Who would have known, right? No, really. You want to forget that I'm a lawyer for now. And one thing that became very clear to me, the tech in Ukraine is really good. There are a lot of interesting projects, a lot of very smart, capable people, hard-working people. I will say, you know, I was talking to venture capital and tech people in Poland and Estonia, and they run incubators in those countries as well. And I said, what can you tell me about Ukraine? And they say consistently, the best teams with the best tech in Poland and in Estonia come from Ukraine. And it's true. I've seen a large part of this when I have been in different parts of Ukraine. Interesting projects, interesting ideas, people working very hard. Ukraine should become a world-class tech hub. There's no reason why, simply based upon the natural resource, the people here, that Ukraine should not become a world-class tech hub. But to do it, it needs a world-class, a global platform as a basis for an incubator. And this is really the idea behind the AO system. The AO system is intended to bring to Ukraine a global network, a global platform upon which businesses can be developed. So the story I give, this is actually from about 4 months ago, 5 months ago. I was here in Kiev, and I was speaking at the Smart City Conference. And one of my co-speakers had developed some really interesting technology. The technology was education-oriented, good tech, customers, revenues, investors. And I said to him, I'd really like to come to your offices to take a look at what you're doing. Are you here in Kiev? He said, no. Where are you? I'm in Finland. Why are you in Finland? Well, we're with an incubator in Finland. Are they investing? Is that why you're there? They've invested? He says, no, we have money, we have revenues, we have clients. Then why are you in Finland? Because if I tell people that I'm calling from Kiev, they don't take me as seriously. And the reason for this is because the incubators very often have their own reputational value. If I tell you I come out of Techstars, you say to yourself, wow, this guy must know what he's doing. If I tell you I come out of this Finnish incubator, apparently, people take this Ukrainian startup more seriously. We need to be doing the same thing here. And so the rationale behind this incubator is to create in Kiev, in Kharkiv initially, perhaps in other cities as well, a platform upon which Ukrainian technology companies can become competitive. So when I was walking around Ukraine, talking to different investors outside Ukraine, dealing with various tech startups, it became clear to me that there were really two information problems. One from Ukraine going outside, and the other from outside Ukraine coming in. So from Ukraine going out, very often there are startups, new business ideas, concepts, technology that are looking to market their products, their services outside Ukraine. They're looking to market into Shanghai. They're looking to market into Chicago, Western Europe. But very often, as good as the tech is, the folks don't really have a good understanding of what the market is. This is true in terms of customers. It's also true in terms of investors. So you heard Uliana tell you how tough I am. I'm not that tough. But you heard Uliana telling you how tough I am. I approach this area from the business side. I was a banker for many years. Are any of you familiar with Citigroup, Citibank? Okay, so I ran Citibank in Japan. We were about 11% of the business globally. And one of the things we did, among the various businesses, we did principal investment work. What happens when you go to pitch? Typically you have 5 or 10 minutes to pitch your idea. If you make mistakes, if you're not pitching correctly, if your model doesn't make sense, do you think I would stop and say, hey, excuse me, great tech, page 3 of your deck, I don't like that much. Or really interesting business model, but have you thought about whether this is really marketable in Chicago? No, I don't do this because I'm really busy. What I really say is, thank you very much, and you never hear from me again. Okay? What we do in the incubator, and it's really part of the value of the incubator, is we tell you what they're thinking. We're very direct. This is not like crash tests here in Ukraine. In crash tests in Ukraine, there's a lot of, honestly, there's too much laughter. People smile. When we do this in the United States, there are red faces, there are tears. I've seen one case where someone punched somebody because we're very direct. Not because it's fun, but because we want you to understand what it is that investors and partners are thinking, so that you just don't never hear from them again. We don't want you to never hear from them again. And so there's an information gap. We need, if you're in Ukraine, to be able to understand better what partners are looking for, what distributors are looking for, what investors are looking for. But there's also an information gap from outside Ukraine into Ukraine. When I tell my colleagues that I'm going to Ukraine, first of all, they're not sure where Ukraine is. Secondly, they sometimes think it's Siberia. If I tell them in Kharkiv, they think I'm in Russia. It's hard for them to understand the value of what's in Ukraine. Now, I will tell you, that is changing. Slowly, people are becoming aware that there is some valuable tech here, particularly in the IT sector. But still, generally speaking, when you're talking to investors and partners outside Ukraine, they don't have a good understanding of the value of business here, the value of technology, the value of the young teams. And so it's a double information gap, right? We have folks in Ukraine that need to understand better what they're dealing with outside Ukraine, and we have people outside Ukraine who need to really, if they're going to participate in what I think will become an emerging tech hub, they need to understand better what's going on inside Ukraine. Make sense? Okay, so for this, we decided that we would have our business incubator. And our business incubator really has 3 basic concepts behind it. First, that we will bring together world-class Ukrainian and non-Ukrainian experts. And by this I mean experts who really have done the business. I'm a professor, but I'm really not. I am now, but I was a banker for many years. We want people who have actually run businesses. I can go ahead and talk to you about a business. I can read about it, but I really can't teach it unless I've done it. It's hard for people to convey. I mean, you have to see someone sweat and cry to really understand what it means to run a business. And so we've brought together people with real experience from outside Ukraine, inside Ukraine. Here are some of our mentors. Just to give you some sense, we have Andy, who was on the video. Andy was one of the founders of Nest. Some of you may know Nest. They were sold to Google for over $3 billion. He worked at Apple as well, and Google. He's one of our mentors. You saw Sophia. Sophia was the I think, founding lead team member of Women at Google. She now has her own startup called Let's Enhance. It's a AI-based imagery enhancing startup. We've got John Kim. John was one of the founders of a company called Five9. They listed on the NASDAQ. They were a classic unicorn, greater than $1 billion valuation. Nadia, who was also on the video, Nadia was the former head of Microsoft here in Ukraine. The point is, we've got 26 mentors. We're very careful about who we bring on as mentors. We are looking for people not just who can read and sort of study about it, but who've actually done it, people with practical business experience. Each of the teams in the incubator will have at least 2 mentors, one Ukrainian, one non-Ukrainian. We may, in some cases, bring in a third. And so the mentors are going to work directly with each of the teams, and they will do it on a one-to-one basis, at least 1 hour each week. It'll either be done in person or by video conference or both, but the idea is that the teams will get to work directly with people with real experience. Now, how does this address our information problem? Number one, you'll get to talk to people that have real experience in getting funding, selling products, developing partnerships outside Ukraine, as well as people within Ukraine that have real business experience. And number two, now when you go to Chicago to raise money, hi, who are you? I'm the Chuck Whitehead company. Where are you from? Ukraine. Okay. Tell me about your business. Well, my business is this and this and this. I've been mentored by Andy Baines. Ah, I know Andy. Or I know someone who knows Andy. The point is that we're now giving a context to your business. Our mentors who are outside Ukraine will understand better what's going on within Ukraine, and more importantly, they'll bring to Ukraine the experience, the insight in terms of raising capital, developing products, pitching business that we think otherwise has been somewhat weak here in the country. Good so far? Yeah. Okay. Secondly, we need a really intensive training process. So we will start off with a 6-day, 12-hour boot camp. You will hate me by day 6. I hope not that much. And what I mean by that is most of the boot camps, so I've done boot camps in Ukraine, typically they're 2 or 3 days long. You really can't do a lot in 2 or 3 days. You really can't even do a lot in 6 days. What we're doing in the first 6 days is making sure that the teams are up the curve enough that they can work with the mentors. So those first 6 days are very intensive, followed by a 4-month curriculum. We're starting off here in America House, as Christiane mentioned. Our first incubation cycle here in Kharkiv will be at Window on America, so we'll beam into Window on America as well. Some of our lectures, for those of you not in the incubator, will be available. About 14 of them will be public. You can either come here to see them, or we'll beam them. We'll live stream them on one of the one of the screens. Just watch the website and the Facebook page, and you'll see how. But the idea here is intensive boot camp, 4 months of a really tough curriculum, and demo days. This will give you an idea of just how much we're going to cover. It's a lot of stuff. Makes me tired looking at it. What will happen is we'll have lectures for up to 3 hours, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of each week for the incubated teams. Again, some of those are public, many of them are not. In addition, we'll have 2 to 3 sprints over the course of 4 months. A sprint is where you basically say goodbye to your friends and your family, and you work nonstop for about 48 hours on a particular problem. So the first sprint, for example, will be on your pitch decks and on your presentations and your business model. And the idea is to get your core team members in a room together and just focus to fix the problem. And we'll do 2, 3, maybe 4 of those over the course of the 4-month period. We will culminate with demo days. A demo day, for those of you not familiar, is basically where you're going to pitch your business to a group of folks just like this, some of whom are investors. We'll also beam the demo day outside Ukraine. We'll make recordings of it. We will bring in investors from Ukraine, perhaps investors from outside Ukraine. More importantly, even before the demo day, we will start to profile you with investors. It's critical for us that you have the skills, the ability to pitch business, to work with partners, to find distributors, to be able to pitch your business and attract investment. And so we'll start doing this even before the demo day, but certainly by the demo day, you're going to make a pitch for the new business. Finally, partner with people who can support your business, lawyers, financial managers, and others. One of the things, and this is true in the United States as well, you see this here in Ukraine, you get a lot of startups that don't know the basic legal questions. How do I create the business? What are the tax issues? Bookkeeping. And so what we've done is partnered with a number of lawyers and law firms, financial managers, who have agreed to provide a certain amount of service for no cost. If it's more complicated, there will be some cost, but they will defer the fees for up to 2 years. And for really significant things like raising capital, well, then they'll get paid because the founders are getting paid. So here are some of our partners. This is not a complete list, but you get a sense we've got some really, really good partners who agreed to work with us to help us develop this ecosystem to support not just the incubator, really to support the broader startup community, but to work with us and our mentors in developing new business here in Ukraine. Good? So, the basic concept is we've got great mentors, some of whom will teach, all of whom will work with businesses. The mentors are involved also in the selection process. They're involved in deciding who will be in the incubator. It's important, right? I don't want to say to a mentor, you must work with this company. I want them to say, gosh, these guys are great. I want to work with them. So we've got great mentors who will go ahead and participate in this teaching process, who will provide support not just through the boot camp, but through the entire 4 months. And we have an infrastructure of financial managers, lawyers, and others who will also, outside the incubator, provide services to support the startup world. Good? You won't get a diploma here. Okay? I'm sorry, we do not give out diplomas here. What we will do is give you a really great opportunity to work hard and to bring in, we hope, foreign capital, foreign partnerships to make your products stronger and more successful internationally. That's our real goal. You know what? I might give out diplomas, but generally I don't get. I just like this picture so much. And so that's basically who we are. We have started to accept applications. As I mentioned, we apparently have 3 already. You can find them on our Facebook page. There's a link. Our site will open shortly. You can find the site as well. But in the interim, if you go to AO in Ukraine, ao.in.ua, that's our Facebook page, and it will also be our web page once we're live. So I would encourage you to go and look at the application, get a sense of what we're looking for. By the way, in terms of the tech, we are looking at all types of tech. Some of you do IT, that's great. I'm looking at chemistry. I'm looking at pharma. I'm looking at nanotechnology, hardware. We're not limited in terms of the type of tech. The only thing we want is for the tech to be Ukrainian originated. Ukrainian tech to support Ukrainian startups. Good? Good. So that's my pitch. Are you going to invest?
Sure.
There you go. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions. Any questions? Yes.
We're streaming, so
thanks. What are the terms of cooperation with your incubator? I mean that it's definitely not for free. You receive their share in the share capital?
Sure. So, so the question is, what are the economics? So no cash. I am fully funded for over 3 years. We've received funding from the USAID Competitive Economy Program. So there is no cash. We do take some equity, but the equity doesn't come to me. The equity actually goes to your mentors. And to the extent that you develop a closer tie to a financial manager or a lawyer, they may get some equity as well. We will never go above 7%. Never. We have a 7% ceiling. That is less than half of what many incubators in Ukraine charge. Why? This is the global standard. 5 to 7% is what you expect to see globally, and that's what we're living by. So there's no cash. There is some equity. The equity will go primarily to the mentors. Each mentor will get 1% of the company in which they support. But you want this, right? You want them to be incentivized to support you. Honestly, and you saw from the video, they're really not in it for the economics, but you still want to give them some support. Same thing with the financial managers and the lawyers, right? They're providing some free services, they're deferring fees. You want to give them some incentive, even a little bit, some economic incentive to work with you, and we do this through equity. So no cash. I'm fortunate to be funded, thanks to USAID, but at the same time, some equity, never above 7%.
Yeah.
Good?
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
What amount of money can each project expect from your fund?
So the question is, do we invest? No, we are not investing. That's not our goal. Now, within a year, maybe 18 months, we may raise a fund that will support businesses in Ukraine. Once the incubators are working well, once we can show that there are real businesses here that will attract global capital, we may raise a fund. But initially, that's not our goal. And there's a reason for this. We want this to be an open incubator. There's a view, and I see this often in Ukraine, that money is money, right? Whether money comes from Joe or Tom or Frank, money is money, so let's fund, look, I just want this cash. It's really not the way it works, right? If you are doing a pharmaceutical business, let's say, you want funding from someone who is known for investing in pharmaceutical companies. You want funding from someone that's got a reputation. Why? Because really it's a stamp of approval. It means, look, I'm a smart guy. I'm smart money, and I've decided to invest some of my money with you. That means that other people will say, well, hey, this guy must be pretty good. We should invest as well. So not all money is equal. In fact, some money you don't want because it potentially signals, well, maybe this guy isn't as strong as we'd be interested in. On top of that, smart money, people that are investing in a sector or have particular interests, have connections, right? They want you to succeed. They want you to have other people to work with, so they'll introduce you as well. So, in fact, we tried not to limit ourselves. Even if we create a fund, we don't want to be tied specifically to the incubator. Another way of saying it is, I want to lose. If I always win, no one else will invest. I want others to come in because it's better. It makes my life a little harder, but it makes the businesses in the incubator better off. So our focus really here is to have multiple sources of funding. Again, not from us in the first instance, but we'll focus very hard on helping you at least locate people who might be interested in giving funding. And that's funding in Ukraine, outside Ukraine, government funding, private funding, I don't care. But we want to go ahead and find the broadest reach, the broadest range of funding possible. Good? Yeah. By the way, in the United States, I teach in the law faculty. We never answer questions. We only ask questions. This is very unusual for me. So.
Hello, thank you for the pitch.
Sure.
Do I need to have an open business to apply, or I can apply with the MVP or prototype or maybe idea?
Yes, the short answer is, so an MVP, minimum viable product, basically a prototype, something that you think meets the basic minimums for the business, or even something a little less developed. This is all fine, right? If you look at the application, you'll see we actually ask you, where are you, right? Are you at the prototype stage? Are you at the MVP stage? Are you at the idea stage? So no, you don't have to have revenues. One of the things that has been a particular problem in Ukraine is that investors and incubators are looking for revenue-driven businesses. Not necessarily profits, but revenues. Well, that's a lot to ask of a business. So no, we're not looking for revenues. We're okay looking at the pre-revenue stage. My guess is, realistically, we will see a lot of prototypes, just because I see a lot of them here in Ukraine. But you're not limited to that by any means. Non-prototype businesses are fine, and we certainly are not looking for revenues. We'll help you hopefully build the revenues, as opposed to expect you to have them. Yep.
Hi. Can we apply if our team not only in Ukraine?
So the question is, can you apply if the team has non-Ukrainian folks in it?
No. Ukrainian team, but team members are all over the world.
Oh, sure.
Someone in Vietnam, in India.
So our goal is to build business here, but that doesn't mean that the people have to always be here. Some of the most successful Ukrainian businesses have operations in Ukraine and outside Ukraine. This is actually very typical. If you're going to market in the United States, you're probably going to need to have an office in the United States at some point. So we're not in any way limited by the location of people, but our goal, we are not an export system. Our goal is to build business here, and part of that has to do with the way ecosystems develop. So in the United States, there are these studies that have been done, surveys. Over 80% of companies that are incubated in a city stay in that city, and it makes sense. The mentors are there, the infrastructure is there, their families are there, and so they tend to stay there, and that's very much our focus. So if what you're suggesting is perhaps it's not a Ukraine-based business, I'll never say no, but that's not a good thing. If what you're saying is it's a Ukraine-based business, but it has participants outside Ukraine, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Folks over here.
I have a question concerning infrastructure. Our infrastructure is located on Chicago, Illinois.
I'm sorry?
Our infrastructure is located on Chicago, Illinois data centers.
Okay.
And we run business in Ukraine because we have a local legal entity. And what do you think? Can we apply for such program in such circumstances?
Where are your operations?
Sorry?
Where are your operations?
In Ukraine.
Done. Yeah, but systems are not the issue. Platforms and systems are not the issue. I want to know where the revenue generation is, the brains, right? If it's here, done. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Olena, and I have a question. You said that the applicants should be like Ukrainian-based business, but we all know that Ukrainian-based business then try to globalize. And can you please a little bit develop if the business should actually aim to operate in Ukraine and then maybe go abroad, or this business can also go abroad? Because the sense, sure, I guess, of the program is to get these medium, small entrepreneurs here, like boosting, etc. Can you please develop on it? Thank you.
Sure. So what I'm to be very clear, because I think the last 2 or 3 questions have touched on this. We're not saying that you can't have operations or offices outside Ukraine. I expect this, actually, right? For the same reason that American companies will have offices in Kiev, right? Or German companies will have offices in Australia. You'd expect this. What I'm looking for is for the principal operations, the revenue generation, to at least in the first instance be in Ukraine. I cannot predict what will happen 5 and 10 years from now. You will do whatever is the best for your business. My expectation, however, is that it's Ukraine-based technology, and at its core, it's a Ukrainian business. So if it turns out that over time you decide you need to have an office in New York, that's fine. Just like New York companies will have offices in Kiev and elsewhere. Again, I don't anticipate there being a limitation that way. What happens 5 years or 5 months from now is something that you will do for the purposes of your business. But the tech, I hope, is based in Ukraine, and again, the brain power, we hope, is based in Ukraine as well. Sorry.
And you're expecting the team or the founder working in the incubator?
Founders.
Founders.
So the founders, at a very minimum, together with the core team. Now, we can adjust this based upon the size, but really the key decision makers. So if you think more generally, right, about what makes a good team, you're going to have 3 basic components. You've got a technologist, someone that knows the science. You've got someone who can communicate with investors, and you have someone that can develop markets and develop products. Those 3 people, whoever they happen to be, founders or not, I would expect to be at least those 3 to be part of this. So whoever the key decision makers are, Whoever the fundamental sort of drivers of the business are, I'd expect to participate in the incubator.
Okay, thank you.
I have two questions actually.
Sure.
So you just mentioned now that that there should be 3 people. I heard
It could be the same person wearing 2 hats.
And there is well, the same person, and there is this strong orientation towards the science. If we say, I know there is a brilliant company in Netherlands who actually leases solar panel to people, and it's not really any kind of scientific product. They are just financial wizards. They're not even in energy. Do you accept the guys like this who say they don't do anything really breakthrough? They're just good at making Excel. This is one thing, one question, and another one. Do you accept companies that work primarily on the Ukrainian market or no?
So the first question is, are we taking companies that are commercializing technology?
And rather, who are just have breakthrough, those who have breakthrough financial models.
But that's commercialization, right?
Well, not really.
So what do you describe? So they're not the inventors, right? But they have figured out a way to finance and distribute.
Yes.
That's good.
But
that's commercialization. They may not be the ones who develop the product, but if they have found a way to commercialize and distribute, that's something we'd be interested in.
Okay.
If they're Dutch, not so much, right? But if they're in Ukraine and doing this, yes, we'd take a look at this. Your second question was
if companies like not only beachhead market, primary market is Ukraine. Are you interested, or
primary market in Ukraine is fine.
Okay.
What I've found, however, is I've not yet found a company, and perhaps it's there, where the tech or the product couldn't work outside Ukraine. It's just that the founders don't necessarily know this. So if the current focus is Ukraine, that's fine. We'll make you better.
Okay. Thank you.
I sometimes talk like a New Yorker. If I speak too fast, throw something at me.
My question is, what will be the process of mentoring? I mean, how often it's gonna be, and what will be like the cycle of the? You mentioned that it will be like 4 months, and how long the mentors are going to have like a time for consulting.
So what will happen over the 4 months? The first week will be the boot camp. And there what we're actually doing is getting you ready to work with mentors. What I've seen in many cases is that there is a lack of experience and really understanding about what is necessary to succeed as an entrepreneur internationally, globally. And so what we don't want is to have a very sophisticated mentor and a team here in Ukraine kind of do this for 4 months, right? So the first week is to really focus the Ukrainian team to understand just the basics. Over the next 3 months and 3 weeks, we will have assigned mentors to each team. I'll do it based upon what happens during that first week. And you will meet at least once a week for at least 1 hour with both mentors or sometimes 3 mentors. And it will be done either in person or remotely. So sometimes they're here in Ukraine, sometimes they're in London, or they're in New York. And if they're in New York, they'll just simply join by video conference. But the idea is that you will work fairly closely with them on a one-to-one basis. Very likely, there will be times when your business needs some special expertise. Maybe we're having a branding problem, or maybe we're having an internet marketing problem. Some of that will be picked up through the lectures. Some of that may require a little bit more detail. When that happens, the mentors will contact me, and we may bring in somebody else just to look at that one particular area for you, if there's that need. For example, you might be a hardware startup, and there is some particular aspect that we need to bring in someone who has some experience in, let's say, production in the United States, right? That would be a particular addition to the basic mentors who are working with you. In addition, the mentors are also going to be involved in lecturing. So over that 4-month period, we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, up to 3 hours of lectures each night. And those lectures will, in almost all cases, be done by mentors as well. So you'll have a lot of interaction. You'll be sick of the mentors by the time the 4 months is up. Either you'll be working with them one-on-one, as well as through lectures. Keep in mind, on top of this, we would also expect you to work with financial managers in terms of tax and bookkeeping, with lawyers in terms of basic legal structuring, and we already are thinking about additional events, special events, where we might have guest speakers come in. So it's a pretty intense 4 months, but you'll get a lot of exposure to the mentors. Yep. What else?
I'm the owner of the business for already more than 20 years. And on the base of my business, I'm starting to build now the marketplace. And that is now a trend for all these things. And what could be the requirement for me? So from one side, I'm running medium-sized business. It could be big for somebody in Ukraine also. From another side, I'm a startup. But 20 years...
20 years is not a startup.
But 20 years of the experience, it's not easy to hide in a pocket. So are you taking the participants like that or not? Or?
So we have no... the only requirement is Ukrainian-based tech with businesses that we're looking to build in Ukraine. That's it. And you see, even there, we may have people who are outside Ukraine or people who are locating servers in Chicago. That's fine. We're just looking for Ukrainian-based tech, the brain power, and Ukrainian-based businesses. We have no other requirements. But realistically, if you've been doing this for 20 years, we're probably not the right guys for you. And that's because our focus is on rapid growth. And if you've been doing this for 20 years, rapid growth may be difficult to do. I don't know. I can't say this in the ad. It could be that we are the magic solution too. I don't know. But we don't exclude anybody beyond just the basics, that it's Ukrainian technology with businesses that are developing in Ukraine.
Okay. Yeah. I'm doing the distribution business, but looking on the field, I understand that it should be started the marketplace, and I'm already started to make an idea of this platform, and I got already some marketing education for this. So that is completely different from the distribution what I'm doing. I'm working on B2B, and the marketplace that's something different. And okay, I think I should see the forums, apply, and then...
You should just apply, yeah.
And then we will see.
It's very hard to answer these things in the abstract. Again, there's no absolute block. If you tell me you are Dutch, well, that's a problem. But other than that, there really is no block for us.
Other than Dutch.
Other than not Ukrainian. Yes. I mean, our color is orange. We love the Dutch.
Greetings. My name is Nicholas. I would like to ask you the question when we apply for the your incubator, and in a case we get negative answer, how we can approve that maybe something went wrong? Can you say any advice what we can do, how much we can apply?
Sure. So I only give good news. Bad news comes from Nastya right here. No. So the way I would say is this. So first of all, you can apply more than once, right? In fact, I hope many of you do. If you're not accepted in the first round, that doesn't mean it's a bad business. It just means that for whatever reason it doesn't fit. So maybe let me walk you through a little bit of the process. So we will take a look at all the applications that come in. And again, we have very loose guidelines. We are not limited by technology. We are not limited by number of years or whether you have revenues or whether you don't have revenues. None of those things is relevant to us. In a year or two, it might become more relevant, but not now. We are trying to get a general sense of what the market looks like. Our mentors come from many, many different backgrounds precisely for this reason. And so we will take a look at the applications and make a decision as to whether or not some number will go to the next round. The next round will actually involve the mentors themselves reviewing the applications. Now again, they're not looking at this necessarily based upon good or bad. It may be also what's more interesting or what's less interesting, or what I as a mentor can be more helpful with, or maybe what I am less helpful with. So you must understand, it's not a good or bad thing necessarily. It could also simply be, how does this fit into our incubator? Keeping in mind, we are starting small. Right? I am a startup, just like you guys. I am a startup. We are just building this here in Ukraine. So I start small, I start lean, I start aggressive. It means that I will start with a small group because I'm looking to maintain quality. So 8 to 10. But in future years, we will continue to grow. And if you're not accepted in the first, I would encourage you to apply a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time. In addition, as I mentioned, a number of the lectures, 12 or 14 of them, will be public. You can come. Anyone can come. Even if you're not in the incubator, you should do this. They will be here at America House. We will also post them online on our website, and that will provide some useful insight as well. And I expect there will be other events in addition to the lectures that will also be open to the public, either here at America House or somewhere else, where again I would encourage you to participate. The first demo day, for example, we expect to be kind of both lectures as well as pitches by the teams. And so you will actually see the finished product. You can, in your mind, compare, how do I do compared to these 10 teams who are pitching for business? And even that alone is an education, right, in addition to lectures on top of this. So I would encourage you to continue to look to apply, even if you're not accepted in the first instance. I will say, for those of you who might be a little nervous because we're just starting, nah, this is the group you want to be in. I've started other programs, and the first group is always the most fun. And the reason it's the most fun is because I am the closest to you that I will be of any team that I work with, because I'm a startup and you're a startup. In 2 years, you know, I'm not a startup anymore. You're a startup, and I'm success. Yeah, who cares? But now I'm very focused on making sure that what you do and what we're doing for you works. I'm using you as a way to better understand my customers, you guys, and to improve what I'm doing. And so the feedback that we get from the first group, the questions that come up when we're working with the first group will make the program better, and typically for the first group makes it more interesting. So I would encourage you, if you're not sure whether to apply now or in the future, nah, I'm much more interesting now. You should apply now. You had another question?
Yeah. Is it possible to have private consultation from your mentor and from you indeed?
Now?
Generally.
Generally?
Generally
no.
Later?
No. You mean outside the incubator?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're going to be too busy. You might be able to buy me a beer and get me to talk over a beer or two. But as a general rule, quite frankly, we're just going to be too busy. There will be, I expect, again, open lectures and open discussions. And typically you can grab me. 1 or 2 of you did this today. And if I'm free, I'm happy to talk. But being able to sit down and actually spend an hour or 2 or 3, it's going to be very difficult, just realistically. Which is why you should apply.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is, can you tell a little bit more about KPIs for the mentors in incubator process?
Sure. So the mentors are really, and actually it's not the mentors, it's the program, right? We assess ourselves, again, not based on diplomas, but based upon whether or not you have funding and partnerships. That's it. We're a very simple program. I mean, We've got some very basic, so KPI, as some of you know, it's basically metrics that we're using to measure ourselves, right? So some of you may be familiar. And we have some very basic KPIs. How many teams do we incubate? How many meetings do we have? Those are boring. But we have those, right? And we'll meet those easily. To me, the critical KPI is how successful are we? Now, the reality is, at the time you demo day, at the time you graduate from the incubator, many companies will not have funding. It just doesn't happen. You're too busy doing other things. But I do expect that within a relatively short period, 9 to 12 months, you will continue to keep in contact with the incubator. It would surprise me if you don't keep in contact with your mentors, that you will at least have multiple opportunities to raise funds. I can't tell you that you'll get the funding. You might be really bad. Not you, but somebody. I can't tell you that the funding will be available. Perhaps the tech you're working on is not something that turns out to be all that interesting. But the idea that you're going to be ready and have opportunities to pitch, yeah, that is very much a measure that we're aiming for. I am hopeful that a substantial portion of our businesses will actually get funding. So we have not yet launched yet. What do you think I spent most of yesterday working on? We've not yet launched yet. What do you think I spent most of yesterday working on? Investors. Where we're talking to investors in Asia, Europe, the United States, and saying, look, I have this incubation structure. I don't know the businesses yet. I don't even know who's applied. But we've got really good mentors. We have a strong system. You should look. And so we're already doing this, even though we're, 6 months away from demo day. So that's the key KPI for me. Funding, or at least access to funding, and the ability to pitch. Good? No diplomas.
Are there any restrictions for the project? For instance, is it a cryptocurrency related project? Is it okay to apply?
Sure, crypto is fine. I don't like crypto, but it's fine. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
Why
kidding.
you
I'm
don't
kidding.
like it?
I'm kidding. It's a joke. 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 FinTech is cool. I come out of a bank. I had someone today ask me about gamification of science for kids. I said, it's great, but I hate science and kids. So no, it's a joke.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the startup has to be of Ukrainian origin, but there is often a language barrier. How do you approach if the founder doesn't speak English?
So we'll cross that bridge, right? So honestly, if you're going to pitch globally, someone's got to speak English, right? And so if you have 4 mentors, none of whom have English capability, that's going to be a problem. Not because of me, but because investors are going to have a hard time with this, or partners or distributors. Now, one of the other questions I often get asked is, well, what happens if I speak English but I'm not quite fluent in the language? Believe me, after 4 months dealing with these guys, you'll be pretty fluent. We'll spend a lot of time training you, drilling you on pitching and your pitch decks and all these kinds of things. So that aspect will be fine. But if language is a real barrier, again, it's a barrier for me and the incubator, again, not because of the incubator, but because it's going to be a barrier to do business globally. If it turns out there are 4 founders, 3 of whom speak English tremendously well and the 4th who does not, we'll work with that. But it will depend upon the individual team. Good?
Sorry, I didn't understand. What is the last day for applying to the incubator?
May 3rd.
May 3rd.
May 3rd at 5 p.m. Don't wait until May 3rd. But May 3rd. And then while you guys are away on vacation, I'll be reading applications. But applications, again, are open now. AO in UA, in Ukraine, ao.in.ua. The link is on our Facebook page. Please take a look now, actually. It will give you a sense of what we're looking for. One of the questions I'm often asked is, what are the criteria? What are the weightings? There is no magical weighting, but in general, 60% is really focused on the team. 40% is the tech. If you have amazing tech and a lousy team, not so interesting. If you've got good tech and amazing team, quite interesting. right? So the teams are quite important for us.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is, are you expecting to, from all members of startup team to be involved in the project full-time during incubation program, or it can be like flexible?
So it will depend. The presumption is the founders, the principal people involved, will be involved on a full-time basis. Now, if it turns out that that's a problem, then we can talk about this. But what we don't want is 2 guys show up and the other 3 are off doing God knows what, right? Or we have some rotating group, 2 people on Wednesday, different 2 people on Thursday, poor guy, 1 guy's on Friday, right? That would be bad. And the reason is quite simple. It's not because I'm tough, really. It's because when you pitch, everybody needs to be on the same page. The worst thing you can do is have 5 guys, 5 people with 5 different focuses and 5 different understandings of what needs to be done. Because this quickly becomes apparent when you're dealing with investors. And so we want all 5 to be thinking, or 3 or 2 or whatever the number is, to be thinking in the same way. And that means working with the mentors, that means listening to the lectures, that means getting involved in the workshops. So it's not that I don't want, it's not that we're inflexible, but the presumption is that the core team should be involved. If we're committed, we want you to be committed, right, to make sure that this gets done and gets done properly. If it turns out you've got 4 founders, 3 of them are committed and the 4th says, I want Fridays off, maybe he's not the right partner. And you need to think about that. Because the startup process it's not fun and games. It's hard work. Believe me, it took me 2 years to start up this incubator. It's hard work. But once it gets done, once it's successful, it's also a lot of fun to do. But for this to happen, for the hard work to get done, you need a commitment by the core team. Good? I once did a presentation on incubators in Kharkiv, and I started off by saying, you don't want to join this incubator. Everyone was, what? I said, you really don't. This is going to be a lot of hard work with no promises. I can't tell you that you're going to get money. I can tell you that I'm going to set you up to get funding. I can tell you that I'm going to set you up to get partnerships, but I can't tell you that it's going to necessarily happen. And it's going to be a lot of hard work, and people are going to beat you a lot, not a lot of laughter, more tears. But at the end of the day, you'll be a much better team for it. And your product will be that much more competitive globally, and your ability to pitch the business will be that much stronger as well. So if there's a concern over being able to commit to the full 4 months, you've got to ask yourself whether you're really committed to trying to do this. Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We have already talked about ideas, startups, and business. But can you answer at what moment startup starts to be a business?
At what moment is a startup starting to be a business? So I think of business broadly, right? It's not driven by revenue. It's not driven necessarily by customers. Even just the concept is fine. So when I think about business, I'm thinking more about a business project, something that you anticipate will generate revenues, that will have customers, that will get investment. So it might be an idea, it might be a prototype, it might not be. You could have revenues as well. So when I'm talking about business, when I'm talking about startups, I'm really thinking about everything from just the initial concept, but not just, I was in the shower this morning and I had an idea, right? It's got to be something a little bit more developed. You've come up with a model, you've thought through who the customers might be, you've thought through what the market would be, you have something that makes you separate and distinct from potentially competitors out there, right? That's fine. If you don't have a prototype, we're still interested if the basic concept is sound. To me, that is not necessarily a business in the sense of generating revenue, but it's a business project, and that's good enough for us. Good?
I think it would be interesting for all participants to know your opinion considering the tech industry. I mean, what subcategory of tech, in your opinion, in the measurement of the world, is the most promising? I mean, like fintech, food tech, agri-tech, Internet of Things, etc.
The most promising globally or in Ukraine?
Globally, yeah, and maybe in terms of the volume of the market.
So it's hard to see. You have. So the question is, what do you see as the most promising tech industries globally? And it's difficult to actually answer because they're beginning to converge. And so IoT covers many things. IoT is a broad concept that picks up things that are like regulatory, reg tech, or fintech, or you've got hardware like Nest, hardware with substantial software components. Do you think of that as a hardware business, or do you think of it as a software tech business? So I'm not sure I can categorize it that way. Personally, I happen to be very interested in blockchain. Not necessarily crypto, although crypto is cool, but I think blockchain is going to be transformative. That's just my personal view.
Is that because you're located in New York?
No. It's actually, honestly, blockchain really is Ukrainian. Some of the best blockchain has been here in Ukraine. It's very funny. A couple years ago, I met some blockchain guys here, and they began to talk about their business, and I began to talk about Bitcoin. And after about 10 minutes, he said, "Stop talking about Bitcoin. It's irritating us." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Bitcoin is like 1,000 years ago. We are so far ahead of Bitcoin that talking about it just makes us irritated." But this is true consistently. I've seen a lot of really, really interesting blockchain systems here in Ukraine, and there's a real potential. So if you wanted to talk fintech, for example, what does Ukraine not have? It doesn't have a stock market, really. I mean, it's got a really small one. It doesn't really have a bond market, really small one. It doesn't have a futures market, a little bigger, but still pretty small. What is the United States thinking about doing? We're thinking about putting our stock market, our bond market, and our futures market onto blockchain. The problem is there are so many people used to doing this business without blockchain, they're resisting it. We don't have that problem in Ukraine. So Ukraine can become really the next step in global financial markets. You wouldn't think this, right? But because of the fact that Ukraine today doesn't really have these developed systems, blockchain as a way to enhance this type of trading activity is much easier to implement here. Whether people will trade here is a different story, right? But the tech, at least, and the ability to implement is greater here. So again, blockchain is personally my interest. It's not a New York interest. It's actually a Ukraine interest.
Thank you.
Okay. What else?
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting. How do you see like the implementations? I mean, the spheres of blockchain.
Oh, don't ask me blockchain questions.
Okay.
Well, okay. So let me tell you my image for blockchain. People think of blockchain as nothing more than a measurement system of sorts. But as we know, when you couple it with smart contracts, it becomes a means by which you can transact and pass value. And so the question is whether or not we can create a platform. Think of it as Microsoft for blockchain, a standard operating system that companies can plug into and begin to transact. At that stage, it fundamentally changes the way in which we see transactions between companies, how we record the transactions, how we disclose the transactions, and that in turn has an effect on how securities and instruments that are issued by these companies trade between them. And so the question, so this is not some dream. The major banks in New York are trying to develop this, but these are all proprietary systems. So they want you to move your business onto their proprietary system. It's a way for them to control the trading activity that takes place. Well, why not try to develop an open source system? Again, a standard operating system that people can knock into. At that stage, you take away the authority from any one single bank, right? Which, by the way, is what blockchain ultimately is intended to do, right? Pull away from the central depositories, the central banks, and try to decentralize things. And by putting companies onto the blockchain system, change the way in which we account and manage and oversee these same companies. To me, that's the golden prize in the blockchain area. And it sounds a little abstract, but in fact, on the proprietary level, banks are already trying to do this. We need to pull it away from them. Don't tell my friends who are bankers. What else? Yes?
A quick question. How often do you
Wait.
How often do you plan to run the program?
Good question. So we will incubate over 4-month cycles. Okay, so it means that each cycle is 4 months. We will do it 3 times a year. We will literally go from demo day to the start of the boot camp. I might take Saturday off, but we will literally go from one to the other. Most likely, as we go into the 2nd and 3rd incubation cycle, the application process will become a little longer. This one is a little short. It's 1 month. But the reason it's shorter is because we're also looking for a smaller group. We're starting again at 8 to 10. As we get bigger, more likely we'll expand it to 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, and so forth. But we plan to do this at least 3 times a year currently, right, based on a 4-month cycle. If we get very good at this, we might turn it to a 3-month cycle, which is closer to what happens outside Ukraine, but for now we're sticking with 4 months. But again, I'm a startup. It may be the case we say, 4 months not enough time. Maybe we turn it into 5 months. So I can tell you now we're planning to do this 3 times a year, but it may adjust as we monitor the program and decide what's best for the teams, the projects. Good. Thanks. Yes.
Yeah, me again. There is this guy who wrote about the black swan.
Mm-hmm.
So he also says that, Mr. Taleb says that, that the startup market is completely failure. And we used to say to startups that when we talk to them that your business is to die. Literally 97% of them should die, and that's okay. That's normal state of the market. So, and we were talking today about blockchain, IoT, and so on, and many of these words are actually hype. Really. And how do you intend to filter out those who are hype, like we build an crypto blockchain drone with artificial intelligence? How do you sort out the real ones that provide the value from those we just hyped up?
Yeah. So the question is, I want to sell hot dogs with AI. Ooh, it's a unicorn now, right? Right. And how do you separate this out? Unfortunately, I have to say there is a lot of hype in the startup world here in Ukraine. There's another word for hype. You can fill in the word. That would be a good word. I don't know if the mics picked that up. The point is that there are a lot of these sorts of things, not just in Ukraine. I see it elsewhere as well. And so how do we separate them? Well, a couple of things. First, you should look at the questionnaire. We ask lots of questions. And to the extent that we don't know enough about what's going on, there may be follow-up questions. What does this actually mean? Number one. Number two, I've been doing this kind of investment work for a while, and you kind of figure out pretty fast. Who was it? I think Nastia, right? You saw me with that one group, that friend, that one group that was kind of, not telling the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And within about 3 minutes, you could tell it was just garbage. And it took them another 3 minutes to acknowledge that it was garbage, but it comes out. So number one, we ask lots of questions. It happens. Number two, we go ahead and have kind of a sense of what's going on. Number three, remember, we're going to show ultimately the applicants to the mentors. Right? Because the final stage here, I want the mentors to want to work with the teams. I am not Svaha. I am not Svaha, okay? I am not... I am not Svaha. What I will do is introduce people, but you have to decide whether you're getting married. I will let the mentors decide, right, whether they want to work with you. And these are sharp guys. And what will happen is they will also check. I have something that does ABC. I guarantee to you, before the mentor says I'm in, they're going to call their friend up and say, hey, these guys say they do ABC. Yes or no? We'll hear. You know, I'll tell you, my brother is a medical professor. Every bio and pharma application, I'm going to talk to my brother about it, right? And say, hey, what do you think? Does this work? And get his feedback as well. So that's not to say that you won't necessarily have hype inside the incubator, but once you're in the incubator, if it's hype, we will beat it out of you. It doesn't help you, right? Investors figure this stuff out. I was talking to someone earlier today. You don't want to just forget there are problems. You want to know they are there and wrestle with them, because smart money will know this themselves. And so you want to be able to address the issues, even if they are weaknesses. Look, my stuff isn't great, but here's what it does. That's part of what we'll teach you in the incubator.
Well, just to support what you're saying, I also have a team of people who are selecting the applications. And when I have trouble understanding the technical side, I sometimes call to some of my friends who have expertise there. And I say, hey, what do you think about this? And sometimes he takes a look and say, hey, if that guy does what he promises there, he either is idiot or he deserves a Nobel Prize.
Yeah. No, again, you can figure this out pretty quickly. And again, are we going to be perfect? No, but we're pretty good at this. What else? Oh, yes. Nastia, by the way, did a boot camp with me. So she can tell you just how bad we are. Yeah, terrible.
How do intellectual property rights, how are intellectual property rights are protected during the boot camp?
Sure.
I mean, whether you sign the NDA.
So higher IP rights protected? That's actually a dual question. One is relative to the mentors. And the mentors, they don't sign NDAs, but as a mentor, they are subject to obligations. We cannot say, for example, they can't use the information. It's a common NDA provision in Ukraine, because how do I separate his brain? I can't say he won't disclose it, though. This is typical of venture capital funds, right? If VC firms very often don't sign NDAs, the mentors aren't going to do it for the same reason, because they're dealing with lots of different businesses. But they will maintain the secrecy of what you're doing, consistent with their obligations as mentors. But a formal NDA that says, for example, they can't use the information. You tell me about fintech, some fintech thing, and now I'm working with this person on fintech. How can I forget what you've told me? It's not possible. So a strict NDA doesn't work with mentors for the same reason it doesn't work with venture capital firms. There's the second question of what kind of protection do you get? So we all know intellectual property in Ukraine, not all that strong, not as strong as we would like it to be. One of the things we will focus on, not at the initial incubation stage, but certainly during the incubation process, is whether or not you have something that is patentable outside Ukraine. And that's not because I want to take it outside of Ukraine. It's because investors from the United States have to be comfortable that your IP is protected. And so we will look at that as well, together with lawyers outside Ukraine. They could be in the US, Western Europe, Israel. But the key focus for us will be, really, again, from your perspective, whether or not you have adequate protection. It may be the case that you have nothing that's patentable. That doesn't mean you're dead. It just means we have to think about alternative ways to protect the IP. Including ultimately some sort of just, usage and secrecy and that sort of thing. But we will take a look at that as part of the process because it's important, again, less so to me, more so to you, and to the investors that you would like to attract. Good? Good. Good. Anything else? I'm getting the sign in the back. Am I getting the continue to talk or the stop talking sign?
Okay.
Okay, last question. Good.
Thank you very much for your answers. My question is just for understanding. Startup process, you need pre-seed money, seed money, and A, B, C financing. So foreign investors, for example, American investors, comfort to invest in American company. Do they will invest in Ukrainian company? Did you investigate juridical issues of this process?
Sure. So the question is, how does the jurisdiction of incorporation affect investors, right, in the investment? So part of it depends on your source of capital. If your source of capital is Ukrainian, Ukraine probably works. In fact, if anything, they probably don't want to invest into a Delaware company because they don't want to worry about U.S. tax issues. So in that instance, it might be better for it to be Ukrainian. If it's a U.S. investor, then on balance, they would prefer Delaware, but not necessarily limited to Delaware. It could be Ireland, for example. Ireland is tax efficient. It is a jurisdiction that foreign investors are more familiar with. Can I say Ukraine is never possible? No. But Ukraine has a number of issues. Again, these are regulatory issues. This is me as the lawyer speaking. The legal issues tend to go to how do I enforce my rights as an investor? How comfortable am I that my contractual rights, if I have some sort of investment agreement, can be protected? And how do I know about things like the fiduciary obligations, the requirements for directors to act in my interest? And it's a little less clear in Ukraine than it would be, for example, in the United States. And so U.S. investors may require this. Again, it's not going to be a requirement of mine. I am happy with companies incorporated in Ukraine. The question is, if the funding that you approach is based in the United States, will they require that you reincorporate elsewhere? And the answer is they may very well do that. And if that happens, we will help you figure out the best place to incorporate. Honestly, we won't do it. The investor will tell you to do this. How many of you are familiar with the golden rule? The golden rule, right? It's the old, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? There is also the Wall Street golden rule. The Wall Street golden rule is whoever has the gold rules. And that will be true to your question, right? If an investor says, look, I love your business, you have to be in Delaware, probably you're going to look at Delaware. Again, that is less relevant to me. I want the operations and the business to be here. The jurisdiction of incorporation is something that investors may want in order to be comfortable with risk. And we can, when we are in the happy situation of having that discussion, we can focus on doing that.
Okay, one more. It better be good.
Okay, if after passing your program, from your incubator program, as
no diploma.
Yeah.
Right.
No. And then
for you a diploma.
Yeah. Okay. And then the startup fails. So can the startup get your help, maybe to solve the problems why it fails?
So let's go back to what someone was saying earlier, which is most startups fail. They do. I know that in Ukraine, many people get nervous about the word failure. I am not nervous about this. And that's because if you learn from the failure, then you have made it a usable, I don't want to say successful failure, but certainly a valuable failure. So if it fails, I'm not sure, it's going to depend, right? Why did you fail? Right? Oh, the mentors were boyfriend, girlfriend, they broke up. I'm not getting in the middle of that, right? I'm not going to try to restart that business. It happens in the United States. But if the 2 or 3 founders fail and decide to restart another business, they will have learned from the incubator, they will have learned from their failure, I hope, and they will develop a new business and come back to us. Also, I would hope, but it will depend upon the individual, that your mentors will stay in contact with you. I mean, it's not like 4 months, okay, goodbye. They will have worked with you for 4 months. They will understand your business. You will have worked with them. I hope that if there are problems, you can also draw upon them. I can't tell you that they will do it. It's very much individual, but it would surprise me if you don't continue to have a relationship. So I can't say that we would step in and fix things. Who knows why the business failed? But I can tell you that you'll have walked away with something much more valuable, which is the experience, the know-how on how to run one of these businesses, so that you can start the next business, or the next business, or the business after that, and eventually have a successful startup. Good?
Great. It was a good question. So,
It was good. Okay. Great.
So we unfortunately have to wrap up. We need to close the building. Otherwise, I would love to welcome you here all evening. But thank you all so much for coming. And let's give a big round of applause for Chuck.
Thanks very much.